Thank you so much, because I'm so interested in this class, and so is my friend who I'm meeting, and she's like, well, but we were meeting, and I'm like, okay, so she's probably gonna attend the next one.
Okay, perfect. Yes, it will. They are going to be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel. Classes 1 and 2 were not, which is completely my fault, but we are going to review them for like a good portion of today's class. So you'll have that content in some form. But Lisa, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and this is my face.
Yay, nice. Always.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, Vicky and Marissa and Thomas. Nice to see you all eating dinner. As I was telling David, try to finish. I mean, no, you take your time, but the second hour of class we'll talk about craving spirits, and part of their suffering has to do with food. So it may behoove you to finish your meals before then. All right, before we dive in, everyone good? Can everyone see and hear me? Yes. Yay. Okay, beautiful. It's really nice to be together. I'll just start with, we'll dive in. We have lots to go through today, and this is a reminder to myself, because I was really hard on myself after last week, being like, oh, I didn't get us through the content. You know, we didn't finish class 2. We're behind on the quizzes, and it was a really nice reminder to remember why I'm here and why I keep showing up. And while I don't know all of you and all your minds, why I imagine you might be showing up. So I'll share quickly, because it actually came up on a phone call with a potential 3 Jewels client today. She was like, oh, and while I'm doing this, can someone make sure Tala can get in? I'm seeing some messages that she's having trouble with the link. Maybe Mackenzie or Sam. Thank you. Anyway, she was asking, oh, you know, when did you find 3 Jewels? Like, what was your journey with this stuff? And it really made me think and remember that it was not that long ago. I walked into 3 Jewels in 2017 on a lunch break from my corporate desk job, which I still have, which was in the East Village, and I was in the area. And I walked in because I saw that it was a free lunchtime meditation. Or I didn't walk in for the meditation, I just walked in because everything else I was trying to make me feel better wasn't working. Like, doctors were contradicting themselves. You know, I was trying a bunch of stuff, and it wasn't working, and I was sort of not, and that was my own little myopic individual world of pain, right? Like, I wasn't even in the state of mind to hold or to see the pain of the world or of anyone beyond just myself. So the first few times I came to Dharma class, and the reason I continue to study Dharma, it's not about the homework questions and the quiz questions. It can be, there's magic in those answers, but I'm a lot more interested. I hope to hear from many of you today. Hi, Tala. You arrived with a bang. I hope to hear, I'm really not interested in the correct answers. I am interested in getting through the content because there's power in this content, but I'm interested in, for all of our sakes, having it become something, these answers, these words, these practices, something we can actually use in our life, something we can understand, internalize, and live, you know. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I'll try to get through everything today, but know that whatever you're bringing, whether that's a pain, whether that's some joy, some fruits of the practice you already have, some doubts, that thing in the back of your head where you're like, will that ever go away? Will that ever change? It's all welcome here. So please bring it. It will help us all, I think. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Just someone give me a nod or a thumbs up. Thanks, Suzanne. I got the double thumbs up. And for those newer, I'm Supriya. This is ACI class, or Asian Classics Institute. It's Buddhist Dharma or philosophy. And we are in a course called Death and the Realms of Existence. So we meet every Tuesday and Thursday. Today, we're going to hopefully finish class 2, which I know I left incomplete, and then dive into class 3, which is actually pretty short and sweet. But we'll begin as we always do, and it's fine if you have a mindful eating session as your meditation. Don't feel weird about that. Hi, Zizi Karmakom, I see you just joined. But the idea with this little mini meditation and the offering that we do, where we hold this hand gesture, we chant these words, or just listen. But the idea is to use it as like a little rupture in normal of your day so far, right? Whatever narrative or internal voice you had going on, just interrupt it with as much intention as you can, so that these next 2 hours, it's not like every other Zoom call you logged on to today, right? It's not just staring at a screen. You can hear it for something else. You can hear it for that answer you've been looking for. And I can't give that to you. It's not going to be my words or my slides, but it is going to be the posture with which you hold your mind to receive these things. So that's why we represent that with this hand posture or gesture, which you can see here on the screen. And then we'll finish class 2, begin class 3, hopefully finish it, and then dedicate a couple of announcements as always. So with that, I'll leave this on the screen. Let's do just a little mini meditation. And then when you hear me chanting, beginning to, I'll give you a cue. You can join in wherever you are. And if you are eating or running errands on a walk, just try to bring as much awareness as you can to this moment and the way your body feels this moment. So everyone can begin there. Take a conscious deep inhale through the nose if possible. And begin to invite relaxation. Exhale fully. And just like that, create a conscious rhythm with the breath. Even inhales, even exhales. Slowly allowing a sense of time to slow down and the normal senses to quiet a bit. So if possible, let the eyes close. Divert attention from internal chatter and get really curious about the sounds in the space around you. Or even the sound of your own breath. Connect with sense, your ability to smell, your ability to touch and feel. And notice what's tugging at your mind, what's pulling your mind away from this simple experience of just breathing and being with yourself. Just notice if it's some memory from your day, some outstanding to-do list item. I invite you to recall someone who has the quality of joyful focus. Someone who you deem as a teacher of wisdom. Someone who expresses uncontrived compassion. It can be someone you know, or imagine them, realizing that we're imagining and telling ourselves stories all day long. Meditation is a chance to exert some sovereignty over that story. So create that perfect teacher. Imagine your mind and your teacher's mind magnetized toward each other just for a moment. And in that space, you can let go even further, letting go of any tension or irritation in the body and mind. Revealing something to them that's weighing on your consciousness. Sense a little bit of freedom from that by showing it to them, something you're not proud of, just in the last few days. And with just as much vulnerability, show them a glimpse of the beauty that exists in your mind. Some kindness that showed up in your consciousness, some way in which you served others, took care of others, and that includes yourself. Connect with why you clicked join on that Zoom link tonight. Connect with that motivation, that question, maybe a desperation even. And as if your teacher is helping you expand that motivation. Think of someone else who has that same question, that same desire. Think of all the others who also experience pain or confusion. Cradling this world in your mind as we chant the words, as we open the mandala. We're imagining that the highest wisdom and the purest love reaches each of those beings like a salve or a balm, giving them ease. Not a temporary ease, something ultimate. A complete and total freedom. So you can hold this as a beautiful vision as we chant. Sashi Puki Jukshin Metok Tram Rira Blingshi Ninde Gampati Sange Shindu Mikte Uwargi Drokun Namdak Shingla Drupar Shuk Idam Guru Ratnamandala Kam Niyatayam Sangye Chiram Soki Choknam La Jangchu Bardo Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Chinyan Kipe Sanam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Drupar Shok Sange Chiram Toki Choknam La Jangchu bardo dakni kyapsu chi. Daki chenyen gipe sonam ki. Drola penchir sange drupar shok. Sange chunam soki choknam la. Jangchu bardu dakni kapsu chi. Daki chenyen gipe sanam ki. Drola penchir sange drupar shok. And just make your way back gently, connecting with each of your senses one by one. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with a review of class 1 and half of class 2. I'll try to finish class 2 as well, and then we'll get into tonight's content. So this part, I totally invite you to unmute yourselves. I want to hear how these things are landing in your own words. So don't feel like you need to give the right answer. Just give the answer that is true for you. And especially if you don't think you know the answer or you have a question about the question, please chime in and let's make it a conversation as much as we can over this digital realm. So we're going to begin in the beginning. Anyone remember the name of the principal text that we're using for our study of this whole course, Death and the Realms of Existence? Just looking for the principal text, author, approximate dates. And just unmute yourselves. And
Abhidharma Kosha.
beautiful.
Vasubandhu.
Great. Master Vasubandhu.
350 AD.
350 AD. Perfect. So Abhidharma Kosha in Sanskrit, or if it's easier to remember, the English. So Abhidharma Kosha, right? Dharma meaning, Dharma has many meanings. In this case, it means knowledge, right? And it means specifically the knowledge that can get you out of suffering. The knowledge that gives you the answer to your problem, right? That's the Dharma part. And then Abhidharma Kosha, it's like saying, or that's the high, it's actually higher knowledge. I think the Abhi is the higher part of it. So it's saying it's that highest knowledge that doesn't just answer your temporary problems, but answers a more ultimate problem, right? Of why do I keep finding myself in the same situation? Why does everyone around me need to age and get sick and die? Is there another way? So it's a higher sort of knowledge. And Kosha means treasure house. So it's treasure house of higher knowledge. Beautiful. That's that. And then Master Vasubandhu, who's a very famous half-brother, Master Asanga. Really, he's kind of like this person who aggregated a lot of texts and concepts within Tibetan Buddhism. But let's leave it at that. I know we've talked a lot about him before. Okay, explain how the desire realm can be divided into 20 different parts. Or actually, before we do that question, let's do the one after it, which is why is it called the desire realm? Give me something about the flavor of the desire realm.
David, are you going?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The beings in that realm have cravings that lead to more suffering. So, and they're like more kind of gross level cravings, mostly oriented around food and sex.
Okay, cool. can you elaborate on what you mean by leads to more suffering? Like, for example, I right now am thirsty, I'm craving tea, I'm going to pour myself a cup and have it, I'm not suffering. So what do you mean that the cravings lead to suffering?
Well, the idea that the tea will actually relieve your suffering is not true.
Cool.
There are of the mind that they think that it will relieve their suffering.
Cool. So yes, this tea will temporarily relieve my thirst, but in and of itself, this tea doesn't have that power, right? Because if a little fly came up to the edge of it and fell in, well, it would be a death trap, this very cup of tea for that fly, right? And so the mistake that I'm making by thinking that this tea is quenching my thirst, it might in the future cause me to hoard tea for myself, right? Has anyone ever done that where it's like I'm like nostalgic about cafe etiquette, but like, you know, you get to the spot in the line that you can so that you get served because you see it's the last tea bag or something. I don't know, like those crazy things we do in our minds to make sure I can get enough tea, right? And therein, unknowingly, I'm creating the causes for future suffering. So it's not suffering in that, it's not just that, this cup of tea ends. It's that I don't know how to actually create that tea, like the unending tea that really brings me bliss. And the thing I think I need to do to get that tea actually will always backfire. If it has to do with, I need it for me, it will always backfire. We'll get more in, like, we'll always sort of touch on the desire realm, but so can someone share it says 20, we talked about 20 different ways the desire realm can be divided. Yeah. You don't have to remember all of them, just give me some.
10 bad births and 10 good births.
Thanks, Thomas. What are some of the bad births?
The hell beings.
Of which there are
8.
Yes, beautiful. So there's 8 hot hells and they're mirrored by the 8 cold hells. We're going to have a whole class on that. So yes, that's perfect. That's 8 of the 10 bad births.
And then there's craving spirits and animals.
Cool. Craving spirits and animals. And that's actually the topic for tonight's class. So we're going to go into a lot of detail about the existence of those types of beings. Animals should be easier to stomach because we can see them, right, and validate them. Like, I don't think any of you would feel that a dog or a fly is having an invalid experience of reality, right? You can see them, it's observable. Yes, that's another realm. We overlap with them. Craving spirits, or pretas in Sanskrit, little bit harder to conceptualize because we've maybe never seen a being like that, but we'll talk about what could potentially lead to really a life like that being has, which is torturous. So those are the 10 bad births, 8 hot hells, animals, craving spirits. And then 10 good births.
You have humans on the 4 continents.
Humans on the 4 continents, that's what we're showing when we do this mudra. You see here, my middle fingers are the mountain, and then these are the 4 corners of the universe, or they represent the 4 continents on which humans live. And when you're holding this, you're not just imagining humans, you're imagining all beings sort of transforming into your offering. But yes, 4 continents for humans, and then?
Okay, what are the 4 continents exactly?
Yeah, so every time ACI is taught, someone asks, and I don't have too much more detail. We might get to it when we come to the class about humans. But essentially imagine that in the Abhidharma Kosha, it's a presentation on the way the world is organized, right? So like right now, we believe there are however many continents or, however many observable planets in our solar system. In this system, they said, hey, the world is divided into 4 continents.
Got it.
They're centered around this mountain. Humans live in all of them. So that's all that is, yeah. 4 continents, and then the other good births.
The 6 pleasure beings.
Cool. 6 pleasure beings, or devas and asuras, gods and goddesses, right? So remember, there are some gods and goddesses in the desire realm, and then there's some in the other, in the next realm. Yeah, which is, anyone know the level, one level higher, we could say?
Form realm.
Form realm, beautiful. So let's, before we get to, or actually no, that's the next question. So we've gone over desire realm. Why is the form realm called what it is? Why is it called the form realm? Don't feel like you need to have the right answer.
It's
Because the
physical-
beings in the form realm are the highest form that someone could take.
Yes, perfect, Suzanne. It's exactly that. It's the epitome of beauty. It's the epitome of physical form in the form realm. So we can think of them as gods and goddesses, bodies that don't break as easily, right? I think of like the illusion of, let's say, celebrities as a mini form realm, right? Or whatever society deems beauty to be in that particular society. It could be like a mini version of a form realm. It's an illusion because it is still going to come to an end, right? They're cashing in on great causes to experience themselves in this exalted form, but it will come to an end. And I imagine, and we'll have a whole class on the form realm, but imagine it like this: those people that are under the illusion of, oh, I have my lifetime of wealth, or I have my lifetime creating this perfect body, or this perfect little paradise around me. At the inevitable moment of death, the pain of being ripped away from all of that they were so attached to, right? That pain, it's almost worse, right, than if you had just kind of gone through life understanding that those things are ephemeral, that they don't ultimately matter. So they say that the pain at the final moments of the form realm are more than all of the temporary paradise moments that come before. Apparently, like, alarm bells start going off to tell you, like, your time has come, and everyone else knows. And so part of the pain is also even the shame of others in that realm kind of seeing you begin to decay.
Supriya, the only question I have about that is the reason that the pleasure beings became pleasure beings is because they had done enough work, like inner work, right? So they have maybe ostensibly have figured out the problem of, like, attachment, and they haven't been attached, and that's why they became a pleasure being. Like, they mastered that, but then the idea is that they just couldn't sustain it long enough as a pleasure being. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think understanding attachment and the tricks it plays on our mind is a very virtuous thing. Like, that's a very high virtuous activity. It might not even be that noble of a thing that they did. They might just have spent a lot of time taking care of others, providing sensory delights to others, right? Taking care of others' bodies, making sure other people's places were beautiful. And they could have done it with a lot of attachment. So they're going to have the result of both, right? They're going to have the result of seeing themselves taking care of others in that way, and the result of the inevitable attachment that comes with that.
Interesting. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and remember that maybe this is the next question. So what are the causes that we talked about that would actually get you to experience the form realm? Which, remember, we can experience the form realm with a human body, right? Like right now. So what causes that? Specifically, why do the 4 levels of the form realm consist of 17 different sections?
It's that if you get stuck in one of the stages of meditation and you feel like you've arrived and then you die, then you'll be reborn in the form realm that correlates with the state of meditation you're in.
Exactly. Perfect. So David, hit it with the nail on the head, whatever that phrase is. But to restate, And I don't know what sort of meditation like experience or the experiences you've all had in meditation. So I'll just share personally. I miss him a lot, but our resident 3 Jewels wizard, Richard, who I know some of you know, he was one of my first meditation teachers. And as I briefly mentioned, what really brought me to 3 Jewels in the first place was physical pain and being sick of physical pain. So meditation really helped me, like kind of, at least at first. And I will always remember this session that he once guided. It was one of those lunchtime meditation sessions. I came from my job, and he actually had us work with physical discomfort in the body, whatever that was. He anticipated that we all have it in some form or another. And he had us do a meditation on trying to identify, like, if I could put edges on that pain, where would they be? Right? If that pain had a texture, what would it be? If it had a color, if I could plot it moment to moment, you know how this experience of time changes when you're in meditation? You know, if I could plot it moment to moment, what would it be like? And for me, it was such a gift because it allowed me to have a different lens with which to look at that pain, right? And I could actually experience my mind. And I'm not saying this was a form realm meditation, it wasn't, but it was the first inkling that I got that my body could be in whatever position it could be in, dealing with whatever ailments were going on. And my mind could be in a radically different place, right? My mind could have clarity, curiosity, even joy. It could be free from the hypnosis of that pain. So that's just a personal example of how, you know, I've come to understand that, but specifically the form realm, there are 4 causal meditations that if you do in this life, if you do with this body, your body's in the desire realm, your mind goes to the form realm. It has that high degree of meditation. You do it enough, and as David said, you mistake the nice blissed out feelings you feel there, you mistake them as the goal, right? You mistake them as, oh, maybe this is enlightenment. Maybe this is the nirvana they keep talking about. And you spend a lot of time there, right? Maybe you even retreat from society and you keep bringing your mind there. Well, that must have a result. And what this is saying is the result in your next life would be something like a form realm birth. 4 causal meditations in this life cause 4 form realm births. And together they all have 17 sections. It's like 3, 3, 3, and 8. 9 and 8, 17. Yes, it's that. So that's exactly that. Before we move on, oh, yes, Kelly, I see your question. And thanks, Paul. Thanks, Thomas, for your answer. They do still have afflictions in the form realm. We'll get to what they are. There's a whole class on them, but they have to do with this sense of me, this attachment to me, this reveling in your own beauty and form, right? And actually growing more attached to it as your life goes on.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you heard of Pure Land Buddhism?
I haven't.
Okay. Well, it's like a part of Mahayana, and it's essentially just one practice that you chant Amitabha, Buddha's name, your whole life. But the goal of it is to chant his name at the moment of death, and then arrive in a realm where you can just practice. It's like one of the higher realms, and I wonder if there's a correlation with one of these realms. I'm sure there is, but I just was wondering if you knew which one.
No, I didn't. But the idea is familiar to me. The idea in that a lot of like Tibetan lamas describe that moment of death as a lottery, right? Like it's a moment of mind, right? Just like every other moment of mind. And it's not by choice. The same way that you aren't choosing right now to see yourself as human or however you see yourself, right? It's just happening. It's this inertia that's happening to you. So at the moment of the moment of death, the karma that comes up, it's like a lottery. You don't know what's going to come up. So with that logic in mind, David, it makes sense that there could be practices where you're essentially you're loading up the repository of potential karma, right? As much as you can. So let's say you have a strong association with what that chant means you spend the majority of your mental moments and your speech and your actions doing that thing, right? Thereby, it's a probability thing. Thereby increasing the chance at the moment of death, that's going to be the thing drawn, right? Because you have to put it in there for it to be drawn. We're going to talk about the laws of karma today, actually. So I don't know specifically what you're speaking of, David, but the logic of that makes sense to me.
Supriya?
Yeah.
I have a baby question, not as impressive as David's. Nerd. No, just kidding, David. I'm just teasing. We like nerds here. No, I was just wondering, what would be, if you're a god or a demigod, body of light, what is the downside of that? Besides, like, not actually being in enlightenment? I don't really exactly see how that's not, never mind. Yeah, what is the downside? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, I like it because I feel like you answered your own question when you said,
Well, I mean, because you said we have all of the causes. We have like the perfect amount of like pleasure and suffering in the desire realm, so that's like ideal for getting enlightened. I understand that, but the form realm, you're just chilling in like body of light. Well, like where's the downside there? Did you say that part?
No, I'll reiterate it. And yes, you're right. In terms of that perfect cocktail of pain and pleasure, it's the human realm within the desire realm. But the issue with the form realm, Zoe, is just that it's not complete enlightenment. AKA it ends. AKA it's temporary pleasure that runs out because I don't know how to regenerate it. So it's temporary.
So how is that different than our realm, though?
It's much, so if you were to like, every moment you had, if you had to categorize it as pleasure versus pain, right? And put like a little marble in each of those two buckets, form realm, there's not a pain bucket. It's all pleasure for eons and eons, a long period of time. So part of that is you never have to experience pain. You never have to question your world. You're just blissed out, like you're fine. But then the pain does come, and it comes all at once at the very end when that experience is ripped away from you. So do you see what I mean by that? This was sort of, we were talking about this, Marissa asked it last week, right? It's like when we say it's better or worse, it's relative. It's better in terms of a day-to-day experience, let's say that, right? Your day-to-day experience is better in the form realm, but it's worse in that by the time you realize that you're going to die, it's going to end, it's too late. At that time, you can't change, you can't create new causes. You can't decide to develop the wish to get enlightened. In the human realm, our day-to-day might be a little more up and down, but at least we have the space to access something like Dharma, right? Access something like the answers to these questions. Does that help?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Great. And Tanya, hi. And Tyler, I see you snuck in, and everyone else. It's really nice to know you're here. Okay, beautiful. Does that like jog people's minds? Class 1, sort of superstructure of suffering, right? We talked about, we're talking about this, I'm trying to make a circle, but the things within the jaws of the Lord of Death, right? All these different worlds, types of existence that will come to an end. Their primary flavor is suffering. And I want you to think of suffering as a misunderstanding that we don't know we're doing. For example, like I was walking around my house today being like, where did I put my glasses? I'm like half blind. I could not find them. And of course, I'm sure this has happened to anyone who wears glasses. They're literally on my head. But I can't see them because I don't have my glasses on. Or I could, right? Like it's that sort of mistake. We're not trying to create suffering. We're not trying to get stuck here. We're making a mistake we don't realize. Oh. Hi, sorry. Weird Wi-Fi. I'm back. I don't know when I cut off because I just kept talking.
It was a good point. Like your hands were up and it was like you really making a point.
You were talking about what happens to people who have glasses, and I'm guessing they were on your head.
They were on my head, exactly. Yes, my point was that no one's asking for suffering. No one's being like, oh, I know exactly the causes to create the suffering in my world. Let me keep doing that, right? It's this mistake that we don't know we're making and we can't even see it because our glasses are on our head and we don't realize they're there. I love whoever's drawing on these slides. Okay, so let's quickly go through the first half of the second class. Oh, we were great on time. And then I promise we'll finish it because we didn't get to all of it. So we've talked about the desire realm, the form realm. So that leaves us with anyone?
The formless.
Exactly.
Realm?
The formless realm. Perfect.
The light goddess.
Oops.
Goddess of light.
The formless realm. Explain how the location of the formless realm is determined. Where is the formless realm?
I thought it was all kind of in our realm, like on Earth and anywhere else where there can be something formless.
In the bardo?
Say that again, whoever said that?
Is it in the you're just a mind, so is it in the bardo?
So the bardo refers, and we'll have a whole class on it, but that refers specifically to that time between death and the next rebirth. The formless realm is a rebirth. It's not that intermediate space. But yes, JJ, to your point, it's exactly where you are when your body dies. Right? So remember how we talked about you have your body, you have your mind. Hopefully everyone's on board with that. They are connected. Supriya body, Supriya mind. There's definitely a connection, but they are not inseparable. You can talk yourself through the logic of that. They're not inseparable. So at the moment of death, yes, it's very easy to see that this body there's only one place it can go. But you can't prove to me that the mind at that time stops. You can't prove to me that it doesn't stop. How about that?
Was this the one where you used the inception metaphor?
Yes, exactly. The formless realm is like getting caught. You're in the dream and you actually realize how to create the dream once you're in the dream, and then you get lost in that code. So Hector says it's like the coder who gets lost in the code. Right? Or I thought of you, Tyler, when I heard this, like the programmer who gets lost in the program. You get lost in the mechanics of it, and that's all you are. You don't have a body anymore. You don't have that physical sheath. So you have, of the 5 heaps, you don't have the form heap, but you have everything else. You have a mind still, and you're lost in the capabilities of that mind. Right? So Kelly, to your earlier question, there are still mental afflictions in the form of subtle attachment to that mind itself in this formless realm, right? It is a suffering realm.
I have a quick question on this one. Is it like you're so in the formless and in the mind, in the thing that you're doing, that you're not in touch with like actual present, like things around you, that you're like literally going inward? Or is it like, you know, when Van Gogh is painting and he's so in his painting, like he is, like someone could be calling his name to go have dinner, but he's like, he's just literally can't hear it because he's still visually in this realm, like with his painting and his paint, but he's like in it.
Yeah, it's really beautiful you described it like that, because that's exactly how they describe what a form or a formless realm meditation would feel like. So like if you were, it's exactly that. You're meditating. The example they use is like someone opens your door with a carton of fries and you can't smell them, or you can't hear when they call your name because you're so lost in your own, the realm of mind.
But Supriya, when we talk about these, like, those are kind of like metaphors to the best of our human ability to describe them. Like, you are in one of these realms for your whole cycle of birth and then reborn into potentially another one. It's not like one being can within one lifetime move between realms.
Yeah, great question. Yes, it is like that. As in what you said earlier, death is the portal from realm to realm, and you are there for the cycle of a life. Now, what that life feels like we'll talk about it when, we'll talk about it today. For a craving spirit, time moves a lot more slowly than it does for a human. But yes, for that duration, you're in that experience. But remember, with form and formless realm, you can touch it as a human being, because you can touch it in meditation, where your body's in the desire realm, but your mind temporarily can move to the form or formless realm. You do that enough times and forget that your body is still just deteriorating in the desire realm. You create the causes to actually be reborn in one of those realms and then experience a life there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I hope the recording, it does say it's still recording. I just want to check to make sure. I really hope it still records. We'll see. Okay, so just one more question here before we finish up class 2 content. What are, and you don't have to give me the exact names, but I just want to, I feel like we've already touched on it, but remember that even the formless realm, right, there are 4 different types of meditations that cause a formless realm experience. And the names are not important. The flavor of those meditations are not important. The thing I just want to stress, remember we talked a little bit about this last time, like the debate between what do you meditate on, right? Should I meditate on nothing? Should I meditate to grasp that blissed out, chilled out, my mind is empty experience? All of basically more and more subtle flavors of that are what's going to cause a formless realm existence. So form and formless realm, I feel like as soon as you think of them, let it remind you of what should I meditate on? As in, what should I consciously move my mind towards? Because it will have a result.
Could you review what a causal meditation is?
Mm-hmm. So every meditation is causal in that every meditation will produce a result, right? Causes produce results. But the specific causal meditations we're talking about here with the form and formless realm, it's saying if you do causal meditation A, you'll be reborn in form realm A. If you do causal meditation B, you'll be reborn in form realm B. And they are more and more subtle in that they are more and more unattached from the things of the desire realm, right? So they have less and less to do with the senses and the objects of the senses and pleasing the senses, which you all have probably experienced, right? If you meditate enough, or if you've ever been on like a retreat experience, you don't feel hunger the same way, right? You don't need to be a slave to your senses in the same way. So it's getting more and more unattached to the things in the desire realm. Does that help?
But what would be because achieving those rebirths is still a suffering life. So would you really want to devote your time to those kind of meditations? Or is there like another purpose on the path towards like an enlightenment goal that they serve? Sorry if you went over this before.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. You're bringing us exactly where we need to go. What is the only purpose of bringing your mind to a form realm or formless realm state? We talked about it quickly last time, I think. I'll give you a hint. It happens at the first level of the form realm. Okay, I'll give it to you.
Would it?
And no, it is worth pursuing. So they say that if and when you have the direct experience of emptiness, your mind at that time is actually at the first level of the form realm. So my answer there would be the only reason to pursue those states of mind and train so that you could bring your mind there would be eventually, so right, we talked about it as, can you get so good at stilling the choppy waters of your mind that it becomes clear, like the surface of a still lake? You get good enough at that, think about that as bringing your mind to the form realm, let's say, to that state of stillness. Then do you have the training that at that time you could invite something that you want to reflect off of that still surface? If it's true that what you show to your mind, what you place in front of the mirror of your mind takes on that quality. So can you still it, and then can you call upon something like wisdom, like the ultimate wisdom, like emptiness, the emptiness of all things, aka the fact that this tea is empty of a nature from its own side. It's not screaming out tea. I experience it as tea, but the fly just as validly experiences it as death trap. So from its side, it lacks a nature, a self-existent nature. It doesn't exist by itself. It does exist. It is real. It is as real as what my mind is forced to perceive it as.
Supriya, on that note, would it be accurate to, like, once you get your mind to that level of emptiness, and then you said you invite in or you like reflect something off that empty mind, would it be the right thing to actually think about my Buddhist training and then remember, remember this concept of emptiness and invite that in? Or is the right thing to do just to stay with that emptiness, still, like, to stay with the calmness of mind, to stay with the emptiness of thought, till the supreme truth like emerges?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. It makes me think of ACI 3, which is applied meditation, and it gets exactly to that. How do I apply this power of meditation to an experience like the direct experience of emptiness? And the best way I can explain that is the terms shamatha and vipassana, which I know are mean different things in different traditions. So the way we work with that is, shamatha is that clear surface of the mind, that still lake, right? So you often and repetitively create a state of shamatha in your mind. But then emptiness, the direct experience of emptiness doesn't just happen because you have shamatha. It's actually the fusion of shamatha and this thing we call vipassana. Shamatha, calm abiding, and vipassana, insight. So insight meaning the realization that arises once you direct the laser beam of your mind. You have your still mind. Upon that, can you direct your attention where you want it to go, and then direct it to the highest possible thing, emptiness, in this case, wisdom. Upon that, both of those being there, upon the basis of shamatha having vipassana, that would trigger a direct perception of emptiness. I hope that helps, at least to give a little fodder. I see your hand raised, Zoe. Is that true or no?
Disregard that. That was from like 20 minutes ago.
Cool. Because I know also we've been talking about meditation teachers, Viggy, I would highly recommend Earl Burney, who guides meditation on Friday evenings at 10 p.m. He's been in a 3-year silent meditation retreat by his own choice. And he's a beautiful teacher. He teaches in our meditation teacher training, specifically on the 9 stages of meditation, which are, even before you reach shamatha, there's 9 levels of meditation that you can bring your mind to, right? And you can experience them for yourself and validate them with others' experience. Being like, oh, okay, cool, that's where I'm at. And he can describe all this stuff with much more clarity and truth. Friday, 10 p.m. bliss.
Sorry, I've kind of the same question I had before. Just so the form realm. Before I was asking, about how you get there, kind of, and it's like it doesn't necessarily. It's more about the good deeds you do, or if you've cared for someone. But you're also saying that. Are you saying that every being who arrives at all at the form realm has spent some time experiencing this, like, this first level of meditation? So it's not just the good deeds. They also have done a certain amount of meditative inner work in order to even be in the form realm. Is that true?
I would say so. I wouldn't say that means they've all had the direct experience of emptiness. No, but in order to have that experience, you do have to bring your. They say that the primary cause of form realm rebirth are these causal meditations. So it's the power of bringing your mind towards, to a certain state of goodness, which is, which is stronger than just serving people, right? Because they say 90% of a karmic seed is intention. It's mind stuff.
Right.
Karma is the movement of the mind, and then what follows. It all starts with a thought or a twitch of the mind, as Geshe-la says. So yes, meditation is the most powerful state of mind, focused and clear, and conscious.
But they might just have done one of the causal meditations, not necessarily have gone through all of them or achieved.
Exactly, yeah. So each causal meditation corresponds to one flavor, one level of the form realm. It gets subtler and subtler as you get higher and higher.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that.
Cool. So let's quickly go through the rest of class 2 so that we round that out, and then we'll do a short break before class 3. Yeah, so we're going to finish up the formless realm. So we talked as much as we need to about the formless realm. The other part of class 2 are types of birth, which I'm going to go through quickly. So the first way to think about types of birth it's actually the 5 types we've already gone over, but you can see them here within the wheel of life. You could take birth or rebirth as 1, a hell being, 2, a craving spirit or a preta. We'll talk more about that today. 3, as an animal. You can see that animal realm. We'll talk about that today too. We're going to talk about 2 and 3 today, craving spirits and animals. Then humans, which you all know, and pleasure beings. So that fills out, there you can see the wheel of life. So those are 5 different types of taking birth, according to this view. And then, this is a little more interesting. Can I go forward? Everyone good with this? Okay, never mind. I see some head shakes. What about plants? I like that question. I think about it a lot, especially because I just watched Fantastic Fungi, which I highly recommend if anyone else is interested in that documentary. It's insane and it's beautiful. And you're sort of like, yeah, well, of course plants have some form of consciousness and they can communicate and express themselves and all these things. So Lynn, it's a beautiful question. Aren't they considered beings? And here's my answer to that. Scripturally, technically, they are not considered beings. I think the line in the scripture is like they have to have at least 2 eyes. And so that is one way to take it. But the way that I work with it in practice, if it's true that karma isn't like, there's no one out there in the universe keeping track of my karma. right? There's no one like watching me and when I'm being good and not good. It's just me watching me, right? I know what I'm aware of and whether I'm acting in accord with that or not. So what I mean by that is if you truly perceive plants to have a consciousness, and then you see yourself harming plants, let's say, or taking care of those plants, getting others to take care of plants, you will have that result, right? Your mind registers it, no one else. So if for you plants are this exalted thing, then, and you take care of them, you're going to have that result. If you don't think of them too much anyways, the idea is like that you won't have that much of a result because karma, so much of it is intention and awareness, your own intention and awareness. And yes, Fantastic Fungi is the documentary. I hope that helps, Lynn. I think that's where we get to take this practice in the way that it was given and make it something that is created, like that we put into practice. What does it actually feel like? Okay, so here's a little caveat. It's homework question 5. Intermediate beings or bardo beings, like Zoe mentioned, are not considered a separate type of birth. So know that. And then know that there's things called, like there's full pleasure being and pleasure beings and lesser pleasure beings. And lesser pleasure beings are not, are included among the full pleasure beings. So just these are like little asterisks, I consider. And while you write that down, Grace, if you go to fantasticfungi.com.org, it's $14, but I feel like you're supporting a great cause because the person they feature in it, he's like really devoted his whole life to fungi and making sure people know the power of that. So it's not Paul Stamets, it's someone else. He told his story like he lived most of his life with a really intense stutter that was very tied up with the way he saw himself, and then had an experience on mushrooms that completely changed that for him. And like since that moment or that trip, he never stuttered again and got very fascinated by what these things are. So it's $14 on that site, and then you have it forever. At least that's how I watched it. Maybe it is Paul. I don't actually. That might be his name. I want to say it starts with an M. I'll bring it. I'll remember it for next time. Okay. So last part of taking birth. So those were the 5 types of birth, and then, in case you didn't know, there are 4 ways of taking birth. I definitely didn't think about this before, this class and course. I was like, oh, there's one way to take birth. But there's actually 4, according to this system. If we keep in mind, right, I think that the way to think about this particular concept so that it doesn't just become, oh, here's a list of 4 ways to take birth, is that there are more beings out there than we can conceive of. Right? They're the beings you can see and that you know of, but let's say there's a lot more than that out there. And if any of you have had the flavor or the wish of wanting to become a bodhisattva, like someone who dares to love all beings as if they were our mothers, as if we were their only chance to get out of suffering, well then your mission just got a lot bigger, right? It's not just the beings that you can see and know. There's a lot more. So that's what I try to keep in mind when I learn this stuff. But just quickly going over the 4 ways of taking birth. The first one is to be born complete. So here you can think like Prometheus, like you just arrive into being, fully formed creature. So not the way that we are born, if you are who you seem to be. I tried not to find a photo of a spider for Tala and Maya here. So this is an insect born from warmth and moisture. So they say like insect eggs in the summer would be an example of being born from warmth and moisture. Then like us and elephants, born from a womb. And then the last one is born from an egg, like many animals. So then the next and last question in this class is, rate these 4 births from worst to best, and why? How would a Buddhist rate these 4 births? What would the criteria be?
From whose
Whoever is closest to getting enlightened.
That's and it is related to that, but it's a little more specific.
How much suffering is caused?
Yeah. Which is related, right, to your chances of getting enlightened, but it's who do you harm or not in each of these 4 ways of taking birth. So the idea being, if you're born complete, you're not hurting you or anyone else when you come into being. You just pop into being. When you're born from warmth and moisture, hurts you. They say, like, let's say as you're the insect breaking out of the egg, it hurts you, but it's not going to hurt anyone else. When born from a womb, you're hurting the mother a lot, probably, and it's hurting you. That was another meditation Richard had me go through. I never before meditated on what the experience of being born might feel like going from a temperature controlled pod, right, where everything was outside air and inside me it's all the same, like substance, being squeezed through a very small tunnel, let's say, feeling light for the first time, feeling air like needles. It would feel like needles on your skin for the first time, hearing sound, feeling air in your lungs. It was a beautiful meditation, and it was very jarring. So it's the birth of pain, of being born from a womb, and that's just the pain I would experience. Imagine the person actually giving birth. And then being born from an egg, which would hurt the mother. What does it say? Oh yeah, it hurts the mother when laying the egg, and then it hurts you twice. So apparently you get hurt when being laid and when hatching. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to give you the information and let it move your mind the way it does. And then the final question before we take a little break. So, okay, when my teacher taught this class, he did not go over this question. And when my teacher's teacher taught this class, he also did not go over it. So I referred to the reading because I was very confused by the question. And so I'm leaving you with that verse here. It again has to do with the types of birth. Don't overthink it. I'm just going to leave it for you here. So this is the verse from the reading which answers that question. And this is it in plain, in hopefully a more readable form. It's just asking you, okay, what types of beings are aware when they enter the womb? What type of beings are aware when they enter and stay in the womb, I think? What types of beings are aware when they enter, stay, and issue from? I think that means exit the womb, sorry. And aware at none of those points. And then you have the answers there. Don't overthink it. I see a lot of furrowed brows. I feel like it was one of those kind of minutiae, of the Abhidharma Kosha. It's given to us in this class.
Can you say what wheel-empowered emperors would be in a world where we don't have emperors? Like, what are they today? And is it about a certain type of power? And a self-made victor sounds suspiciously like the bootstraps philosophy of America. What are the hierarchies?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's beautiful. Rachel talked about this recently, and it really stuck with me, this like the dharmic bootstraps idea, which is what we fall into a lot too, which is not what dharma is, right? Of like, it's not that I can just think anything into being and right through just thought transform my world. But no, self-made victors, another way to, you'll hear that term is self-made Buddhas. It's misleading because they're neither self-made nor Buddhas. It means people who in this life don't seem to have a teacher, yet are on the path to enlightenment. So if you've ever heard of like the listeners, the self-made Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas, you might hear that division. So self-made Buddhas, the idea is that they had infinite teachers in past lives. And in this life, they don't have one in form, but they seem to be getting the realizations, right? So for example, when I first heard you have to have a teacher in order to embark on this path, right? Where else do you get your wisdom from? My mind had questions like, well, what about all the kids, the 13-year-olds who have spontaneous awakenings, right? What about them? Where did their teacher come from? What about Shakyamuni Buddha? Who was his teacher? So this is one of the answers to that they might not seem to have a teacher in this life, but if it's true that your mind is a stream, beginningless and endless, and you've had infinite former rebirths, you've had teachers in all those lives, they got you very close to the realizations you needed to have, you flipped into one more life to finish up your work. So that's what that is. Wheel-empowered emperors, I really can't tell you. I haven't heard of them in any other course.
It's a Buddha. I mean, it's a being who, it's essentially like an emperor that is capable of bridging all dysfunction in a society. And apparently in the myth of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, if he had stayed in the princely life, he would have turned into a wheel empowered emperor. But it was like, that was he had this karmic like juncture where he could have stayed or went and lived a ascetic life, and if he had stayed, he would have been the wheel empowered emperor. And they call it that because there's apparently like a chakra over their head. That's what the wheel part is. And they're supposed to have like a caravan that floats in the air, and I don't know, it's got all this kind of alien stuff going on too.
Thanks, David. And that actually, it's cool that you mentioned that, because that is the one place this question went, which I think like we can work with it beyond just being like, oh, question 8 on our homework, is asking yourself, well, why did Shakyamuni Buddha, the original Buddha who had that first awakening experience, why did he take birth from a womb, right? Why did he take that type of birth that hurts so many people? Why did he appear that way? Why didn't he appear born complete? Or like what David's saying, why did he choose that fork in the road where he stayed in a form that's relatable to us? There's a clue. Versus something like taking on the form of a wheel-empowered emperor. And I'll just give you the answer for time's sake, but just think about it. And the idea is really to show us that it's possible for us as well. Because he had the same machinery that we do, a body and a mind in this form. And the realizations we're talking about aren't things that he made up. The idea is they're things that he discovered about the way things actually work. As discoverable to us as they were to him.
This is a side question along that same line of like Buddha's life, and feel free to just like bat it off to after the class, but I'm curious, like if the Buddha as a prince led a life filled with like cravings, or like what was his life like? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, okay, we're going to start class 3 at 8:55. So for those who want to take a break, please enjoy it. And Biggie, to your question, it's really cool because since embarking on ACI, like I can't think of a single ACI course which talks too much about like the life of the Buddha, the life of Shakyamuni Buddha, like the biography. That's not really in any courses. So I know it from exploring it on my own after my appetite was whet by some of these courses. I think Herman Hesse is my main source, like Siddhartha, which I read, and it like blew my mind after experiencing some of these courses. And from that, what I can remember is there was a lot of, it wasn't that the Buddha in his, or like that, what was his name? Siddhartha, when he was a prince, like there was not as much a sense of attachment as a sense of like, what's going on? Like, is this all there is? Right? There's that story of like, he lived a very sheltered life, and then one day was finally able to leave the kingdom, and he saw like an old person or a sick person or someone dying. And he just didn't know that those sufferings even existed in the world, right? Which caused him to start asking, like, wait, what is this life? Like, is this all there is? And what about all these things I didn't see? It seems like that's the inevitable trajectory of my life. And that's what caused him to give up the worldly pleasures that he had and sit under a tree and meditate on the nature of reality. So I don't know if that helps, but that's my understanding of the appearance that Buddha took.
Yeah, I've heard of that story about him leaving his kingdom for the very first time. I guess I haven't read Hermann Hesse, which I will. My curiosity was more about like the first, 30 years of his life. Like, was he a complete delinquent? Like, what was that life like? That is what I'm like curious about.
Yeah, I don't have answers for that, but I think a lot of people would. I know, like, there's beautiful things out there. Yeah, that's all I would say to that.
Yeah, and I'll just like add a little bit of context that every time I read about the desire realm and like cravings driven by food or sex, like I feel like called out, and I just want to hear that the Buddha led a very like indulgent life just to feel good about myself. Like that's really where this question is coming from.
Glad to know. Yeah, no, I highly recommend Siddhartha. It's beautiful. And anything by Hermann Hesse is great. And anyone else chime in who knows more here. Hi, Santi. I see you creeped in.
Hey. I want to know about death.
All right, I do too.
Why are we taking a break again?
Honestly, like I said, the first class, I was sick of hearing my own voice, so I assumed you all would be too, and I thought a break would be nice. And I don't know, you might need to pee.
Oh my God.
I think she's just giving people an opportunity to pee.
Yeah. Hi, Chloe. How to be born complete. Yeah, it's weird. I mentioned Prometheus. That's what Hector mentioned too. Like you might hear in like certain Greek or Roman mythology, like people just popping into being. You weren't born, you didn't grow or anything. You just like appeared as a fully formed being. That would be what born complete means. I don't know if there's examples like in Christianity or something. You just like pop into being. Oh, aliens. Sure. Yeah, Ming probably knows better here and has all sorts of theories.
I remember there's also a character in the Watchmen universe, I think. I forget, Dr. Manhattan probably, which again reminds me of that like born complete kind of a being, and he's supposed to understand like the true nature of time and like is not subject to linear time.
I haven't watched that series, but I feel like I've heard really good things.
Sorry, go for it.
No, please go ahead.
I was just gonna close it out saying like I credit that series with helping me uncover the blindfolds I had on my eyes with respect to anti-Blackism.
Whoa. Is it something recent, like recently released? It's been around.
The latest Watchmen series is I saw it on Amazon Prime, I think, or maybe HBO. I don't even remember. It's a newish one. There's also an old movie which I don't think is as good, but the series I thought was like really well made.
Thomas just said, watch the movie first. It's a great series, but watch the movie first. It's based on a graphic novel. Oh, cool.
Totally. The graphic novel is great. The movie is great. But I can see you like the series better. The series is pretty awesome. Totally worth watching. And also, if you're looking for great graphic novels, like the Godfather of manga did like a 7 or 8 part graphic novel on the Buddha's life. It's really beautiful. Osamu Tezuka.
Send the link, please, in chat. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Someone on my Instagram yesterday shared a graphic novel, or like an animated graphic novel, if that's a thing, of the Dalai Lama's escape from Tibet in honor of his birthday yesterday. It was so sweet.
Quick question about, don't insects or beings that give birth from moisture and warmth are also doing it so through an egg, like insects give birth through eggs. So is the difference between that and an egg birth, like, just I don't know, I just made a random guess that if you are laying your eggs inside of something warm and moist, it's like less painful. Is that?
I think that's part of it, but also I would include in warmth and moisture like organisms that, like flour. If you had a bag of flour and you kept it in a hot and humid place, you get those little bugs.
Okay.
That as also warmth and moisture, right? So like they give the example of insect eggs in the summer, but that's not the only form.
Okay. But you could you have like a lower level, in quotes, being that makes a higher birth choice? For example, like bacteria and eggs, they have this less harmful birth, but their beings are not evolved. I don't know, maybe the insects are super evolved.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's whatever their karmas would demand. Right? So that's the idea. It's karmas are lined up in your stream of consciousness, like airplanes on a runway, and it's just whatever one's in the queue next. Yeah. Until and unless you understand how to purify karmas and strengthen karmas, which we're going to actually touch on in this next class. Okay. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of those karmas unfolding. So it's whatever's next. Okay. Yeah. Okay, are we ready? Class 3?
I was going to ask one thing about the born complete. Would like cloned babies be born complete then?
I didn't know babies could be cloned.
I mean, theoretically. No, but that's not, David said twins are clones, but I don't mean that. That's still coming out of a womb. I mean, like literally lab, or maybe not babies, like animals, like they have successfully cloned sheep.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking, I mean, yeah, I guess if the definition is they don't come from a womb or an egg or warmth and moisture that hurts someone else, because the idea with born complete, like the real significance is that it doesn't hurt you or anyone else to come into being. So yeah, maybe that would be an example of that. That's cool. Okay, so class 3, the lives of craving spirits, Pretas, that's Sanskrit, and animals. Okay, let's dive in. So I know we reviewed this earlier, right? Our source text for this whole course is, I forget who gave it to us correctly, but Abhidharma Kosha by Master Vasubandhu. But for this particular class and the study of pretas and animals, it's actually something called the Lamrim Chenmo, or the Great Book on the Steps of the Teaching, by someone named Geshe Drolungpa, around 1100 AD. Geshe, you might recognize that, right? I think we talked about this very first class, but lots of meanings for that word. It can be, it's a very high scholar in Tibetan Buddhism, but one of my favorite definitions is spiritual friend, is also what a geshe is. I like to think that there's a relationship there between the amount of spiritual knowledge you acquire and the type of person you become. So spiritual friend, that's geshe, and Drolungpa is like the place where he was from. And so that's our source text. And then the question mentions this as well. The Lamrim Chenmo, if you've ever been in an ACI class, you've heard of this before. Geshe Michael will refer to this as the greatest book ever on Tibetan Buddhism. And it translates to the great book on the steps of the path. So you can see some commonalities, right? Tenrim Chenmo, Lamrim Chenmo. Chenmo is great book. Lamrim is steps on the path. Tenrim is steps of the teaching. So the Lamrim Chenmo, this book by Je Tsongkapa, is based on the Tenrim Chenmo. And there are Je Tsongkapa's dates. I know we've talked about him before. To add a little more context, remember he was the tutor, the teacher to the first Dalai Lama, right? The first in a lineage of 14. The 14th, His Holiness, whose birthday was yesterday. That puts into some context who he was. Yellow hat lineage, Gelugpa lineage, you can see that here. So you know where this stuff is coming from. And I think this class is interesting because at least half of it, animals, it's a little more irrefutable, right? Like we can see them, we observe them, we have a sense of what their existence is like. Pretas, you might need to use a bit more imagination, but we'll talk about the karmic causes for becoming a preta or a craving spirit. Okay, that's all I have to say there. So we're going to begin with the craving spirit realm. Here's a visual of what one could look like, because as I said, for them, we're going to need to use logic rather than our sense of sight, because you probably have never seen one. But there's many ways to know things are true, and one of them is logic and the mind. So we'll try to work there. But first, so remember, we've talked about the unique sufferings within the desire realm, right? Like overall, it's a sense of desire. Like we're going to get more specific here. What are the types of suffering in the craving spirit realm? And they can be divided into these three here. So the first one is there's outer obstacles that cause suffering. We'll go into more detail on all of these. Inner obstacles that cause suffering, and then obstacles to food and drink. So, or actually before we go here, just so you know, this whole class, so like hopefully if you got anything out of last week and that whole review, it's that idea that other forms of engaging with reality are possible. Other modes of experiencing reality are possible and valid. Now, what this class and Thursday are going to get to is how do they come about? Why is it that I experience this as tea that I love versus death trap that I'm drowning in? Why? Things are caused. The idea in the system is nothing is random. Nothing is coincidental either. It's all caused. So, craving spirit, what are the specific types of sufferings? Some of the outer obstacles, it's basically, so remember, desire is still the primary flavor, right? We're in the desire realm. So one of the sufferings they experience is they have a blockage to, like something that blocks them from getting what they desire. And it's something outer. So for example, the example they give is, let's say they're thirsty, they have that desire. They see a body of water like a mirage from far away. But as they get close to it, it transforms into a stream of pus and blood. So they have this outer obstacle to getting the thing that they want, that they desire. That's the first one. Then inner obstacles, you can sort of see that in this image, but it's the torture of having a mouth the size of a needle point. And then they say like an esophagus, the width of a guitar string, and an appetite, like a belly that's very large. So you have these insatiable appetites. Literally, you're so hungry, but even when you can get something to eat, you can't get it down fast enough. You can never satiate that appetite. So that's an inner obstacle. And then if those two weren't bad enough, there's a third one, which are the obstacles to food and drink. Meaning, whatever you do consume, it doesn't actually satisfy you. It leaves you either unsatisfied or even in pain. So they'll say it'll be like it burns the insides of your intestines. So even the items themselves, right, causing suffering. This is why I mentioned for those eating dinner, I hope you finished by now.
I have a question.
Sorry?
Sorry, finish your thought and then I'll ask my question.
No, I was thinking about it right before this class because as I said, I was like scarfing down dinner. I'm quarantining at home with my parents right now. And, when I was done, my mom was like, oh, okay, beta, which means like darling in Hindi. Beta, are you done? Like, are you full? And I was like, yeah, mom, yeah, I'm good. I'm great. And I realized that's the torture of being a craving spirit is you never have that sense of fullness, of satisfaction, of being like, yeah, I'm good. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
So if we're listening to class right now and, we're all hearing a little bit of a different flavor of like what a craving spirit would be or would feel like, is that because we've all been in the craving spirit realm and it's like our past experiences are kind of lighting up our mind right now? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to think of it. That is, what this teaching is saying is that we've been all of the beings within all of the suffering realms countless times. You've been a human countless times. And before that, you were in some lower rebirth countless times. Or you flip-flopped. You were an animal, then you were human, then you were a craving spirit, then you were human. And it depends on what you did in that rebirth, right? Or how aware you were of what you could do that then determined your next one. So yeah, I think that's really beautiful what you said, like, because we all have, we'll get to it when we get to animals, like we all have some view on animals from the day we were born, right? Like you put a little kitten next to a baby and not all of them are going to react the same way. So I think about it that way. What were those seeds in that consciousness, in the baby's consciousness, to make it interact that way with this creature we call animal? And I think it's totally plausible to think of it as an echo of what you've experienced before. Yes, and Zoe, to your question, why are they all food oriented? Well, remember, we are in the desire realm where the primary flavor is desire for objects of the senses, primarily food and sex. But you're going to see on the next slide, now we're going to go into what are the causes of becoming a craving spirit. And I think it has to do with food because it's one of the, it's like the basic thing we need for survival, or a desire realm being would need for survival. So you could see why it would be a form of torture to not have access to it. So I think that's why they might use food, but you're going to see some of the causes and why they would correlate to something around food. They don't talk about the sex stuff as much, but you could extrapolate. Okay, so they say there are 4 causes for rebirth as a preta, or a craving spirit. One of those causes is general and 3 are more specific. So general is committing any of the 10 misdeeds with medium strength. Medium strength here means it was neither premeditated nor accidental, right? So the difference between absent-mindedly swatting a mosquito when you feel it on your arm versus going out with a rolled up newspaper to kill the fly, right? Premeditated versus accidental. Somewhere in between those would be a medium strength. And just a quick review, if everyone, in case you haven't heard, what are these 10 misdeeds? Can someone describe them for me, please? Do we know
them? Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh words, idle words,
The 10 Commandments.
Divisive speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, oh, what is it? Shoot, it's coming out of my mind. Someone else finish.
3 of body, 4 of speech,
3 of mind.
World correct wrong view.
Wrong view.
Jealousy.
Jealousy.
Wrong view, jealousy, and ill will, right, you said? Cool. So if you haven't heard this list of 10 before, I heard you in the background, Marissa, you're like, it's the 10 Commandments. No, I love it. And it is. I mean, it is. And you hear this list of 10 over and over. And the way I would think about it, so it's considered the top 10 out of 84,000 states of mind that keep us in samsara. Or the way I like to think about it, keep us in samsara, things being the same over and over again. Even if they take on new and horrific appearances, it's all the same, that suffering. So really ask yourself, how often do you in your own, behind the closed doors of your own mind, get away with things like lying or absent-mindedly killing, which could mean not protecting life. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those 10, but yes, I can recap, David. Here, I don't know if you were here before when we were talking about craving spirits and the specific types of sufferings that they must endure. Now we're talking about what would cause you to actually, for real, experience life as a craving spirit. And the first cause is committing any of those 10 misdeeds repeatedly with medium strength throughout your life. Could cause you to be reborn as a craving spirit. So any of those 10 Tala just mentioned.
Oh, I missed the 10.
Okay, the 10. 3 of speech we'll start with. Or sorry, 3 of body to start with. That's killing another living being. Sexual misconduct or not honoring others' relationships. I'm in one of those modes where it's like you gum up and everything leaves your mind. Stealing others' property. Then you have 4 of speech, one of which is idle talk, or like talking about mindless things. One of which is divisive talk, saying things to divide certain groups of people. Or harsh words, things said with an intent to hurt someone. Or, 4th one? Lying. Did I say lying? Lying would be the 4th one of speech, and then the last 3 of mind. 1 being craving, which is specifically translated as being unhappy when you see someone else get the thing they want. Then ill will being happy when others don't get the thing that they want. And then the last one, which is ignorance or wrong view itself, misunderstanding the way things really are. Thank you, Tom, for that list in the chat. So just know that's one of the general causes of being, you do any of those enough, and they say that those states of mind are cycling through our mind all day long in some form or another.
Supriya, I'm surprised from like ACI 5 where you learn about causes of different, like how your karma impacts your rebirth. Like I'm surprised it's all 10 and not like the ones that have a flavor of like excessive desire.
Yeah, no, you're right. And here's the flavor. So remember, there are 4 causes. This is the general one. I feel like this is like the catch-all. And then there's 3 specific ones, which really do have that flavor of craving. So much craving that you would then experience craving in an exaggerated way, like a craving spirit. So that's exactly where we're going now, Kelly. So of the 3 specific ones, the first one is failing to give in 3 specific ways. If you've taken ACI 5, how karma works, this should be familiar. So failing to give these 3 things. And here's the caveat. The idea with all of these, it's not that, oh, I'm not going around giving away shelter and food every single moment of every day. I'm going to be reborn as a craving spirit. That's not the point here. It means if you have any of these things to give and someone presents themselves as needing those things and asking you for them specifically, you have that chance to give and you don't. Out of this feeling of, I can't give those to you, then I won't have enough. Which is like reeking of misunderstanding, right? I must keep this for myself, otherwise I won't have enough. And they talk about 3 specific things. One is failing to give shelter or food, like basic materials needed to live. Failing to give protection from harm, danger, or fear. And then this last one of failing to give dharma, which doesn't mean, oh, I'm not teaching ACI classes. It's not that. It's not just that. But it is saying if there's anything that you've understood about how to navigate this condition of existing, really understood it, not just understood it because you read it in a book or some teacher said it, but you felt it through lived experience. Oh, there is some point to meditating. My mind does play a role in creating my world, whatever that realization is for you. Especially if it's something that can actually get you free from suffering entirely, if that true dharma, if you have that and someone's asking you for it and you don't give it to them out of possessiveness or clinging, right? And give it to them in the way that they need, that would be one of the ways of failing to give. The worst one, it would be considered, right? Because what's the ultimate shelter and food? What's the ultimate protection from anything? Dharma.
3 jewels.
Yeah, exactly. If you've had some realization on what the 3 jewels really are, and you don't give those away or try, that would create an imprint, right? That would create a result, is what it's saying.
Supriya, does it, let's say the failure to give food, let's just as an example, food when asked, does it matter if the person who asks is actually hungry, like needs food, or if they're asking because they are stuck in their own desire cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. And right after this, we're going to go into the laws of karma.
Okay.
Just clarify that. The first law of karma is like produces like.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you're aware of as you are doing the deed, the flavor of your result will be the same. So if you, for example, if you are giving someone food, but begrudgingly, later on you will experience someone giving you food and you'll be like, oh, they don't really want to be doing this. Yeah. So you're going to get the same flavor back.
What if the person doesn't need food? Or what if they have had too much food? You could be giving them a service by not giving them food?
Yeah.
Is that true? Or should you always just give when asked?
Yeah, so I feel like what you're getting at is like skillful means, which is this idea of like hearing the question beneath the question, which I think you can trust yourself to do once you've had enough practice with this, right? Once you've proven that the way I act in the world creates the world I experience, then you can start to be a little more skilled, right? Okay, what are they really asking for? Right. How are you really going to respond in this situation to plant just the cause that maybe that I want to experience in the future, or more beautifully, that would truly serve them. Right. How can you truly serve this person? Yeah.
Without fooling oneself. Like you could easily fool yourself that you're doing it for their good, but it's your own craving.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And that flavor, it gets at the last 2 specific causes for rebirth as a preta, which are stinginess and jealousy. So all of these you can see, right, to Kelly's point, like what about the flavor of it? They all have that flavor of, I need enough for myself. Not only I need enough, I need, it's that hoarding feeling, right? That I won't have enough unless I keep it all to myself. And okay, so 2 things there. 1, that must produce a result. Because if it's true that having enough doesn't come from keeping for myself, it's like It's like what happened at the start of the pandemic, right? Is it going to make a difference to go out and hoard and take more than you need from the grocery store? Is that really going to be the thing that protects you in quarantine, that delivers for you? What this is saying is that it might appear to, right? It might appear that buying all the toilet paper is going to make me okay, but that's not true. There will be some future result that has the flavor of hoarding toilet paper. AKA, at some point in the future, since you saw your mind take away toilet paper from other people, you will have an experience in the future of not having enough for yourself. And it will be worse because karmas expand. We're going to get to the laws right after that. But that's one flavor. But the more important one, which I think is number 4, this jealousy that sort of, it's like being jealous when people get nominal stuff. What I mean by nominal stuff is it's that twinge of jealousy you feel when someone, you're scrolling through Instagram and you see an acquaintance getting married or getting a promotion or something. And like your second thought is happiness for the person, but your first thought is, when is that going to happen for me? And I hope I'm not the only one that goes through that, but I don't think I am. It's that feeling, right? Of like, untrained, that is generally your first thought. Well, what about me? And the point here being, for those of you who've touched the sweetness that is bodhicitta, that state of mind where you wish that others, you don't even just want them to get the promotions and the partners and the new apartments. You want them to be completely free from suffering, right? It's that wish. It's the wish that you can get enlightened for the sake of all beings. So they're saying the worst cause here that would create this torture of a craving spirit realm is that thing that's the opposite of bodhicitta, right? That even when someone gets a nominal temporary pleasure, you feel jealous. But I'm not asking you to believe me because, as I said, none of us have probably seen a craving spirit before. So here I want to qualify really what I'm talking about when we say karma. Why is it that those 4 causes that we just talked about, if done over and over again, could really, for real, produce a mind that sees the world through the mind of craving spirit? So there's lots of lists to remember. Well, there's actually 4 main lists to remember with karma. We're going to go over 2 of them today, and maybe we'll do the next 2 in the next class. They're all lists of 4. 4 lists, 4 each about karma. So the first one is the 4 laws of karma, or how karma works. And we've alluded to them, but here they are laid out. I'll go through them quick and think of the natural world as proof, because we really take these, we hold them to be true if you consider the natural world. As in, like produces like. If I plant, my dad's, his vegetable garden is coming in, and the okra seeds he planted produced okras, whereas the tomato seeds produced tomatoes. Tomato seeds can never produce okras. Like produces like. That's the first law of karma. Second, karmas expand. They start out as seeds, but now they are plants that bear fruit that we eat for dinner. So they grew. Things start as a seed and they grow. And in the natural world, we take that to be true. All we're saying here is that that is also true in your mind. So if you spend enough time being a slightly jealous person, until it becomes a habit, until it becomes a personality, it will one day snowball into, until it becomes so habitual that at your moment of death, that's the thing that's selected out of the lottery, right? Because we said the karma, it's selected like a lottery at that time, and it has that flavor of jealousy. It could be so strong that you're catapulted into a realm of jealousy, of like craving and not ever being able to get it, because it grows, karmas grow. Then 3 and 4 are important because they kind of make it airtight. It's saying that if there was a cause, If there is a cause, then a result is guaranteed. Which all that is saying is the seeds my dad put in the garden, there is going to be a result. It doesn't mean that all of them will be healthy plants. Some of them might be food for the squirrel. Some of them might be a little sprout that got stamped on. But there will be a result. Something will happen. So if there's a cause, then there must be a result. And then the last one, if there's a result, there must have been a cause. If you see the plant, there must have been a seed. Or take our world right now and any of the many sufferings that are happening in it. And maybe you ask yourself, where did this come from? How could this ever have gotten so bad? Well, it started off as a conversation or an idea or a word. And it grew. But because it exists, there has to be a cause. It didn't come out of nowhere. Yes.
Is this a good time for a question on the 4 laws, or do you want to explain a bit more?
No, let's do it. Because I feel like we reference these all the time, so I want them to feel usable. Yeah, go for it.
My attention is going specifically to the qualifier in law 3 and 4. Like, if there is a cause, then a result is guaranteed. If there's a result, then there must have been a cause. And the model that it seems to paint, the metaphysical model that it seems to paint seems very simplistic, as if like a result can be traced back to a cause. And if there is like, it's like one-to-one mapping, and that is like messing with how I see the world, where like any event in my life, there is like so many different things that have come together to cause that event. So I'm curious if that is intentional, like if that emphasis on, is there an emphasis on or is it like, if there is a cause, then results are guaranteed? Like I'm curious about that choice of
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a beautiful question. And it's so relevant. It's so relevant for this course too, because, well, I'll get into it. So what you're touching on is how complex of a phenomenon karma is. So we often will talk about karma as being this very hidden thing, right? It's very hidden to see the true workings of karma. It's actually more hidden than something like emptiness, right? They say emptiness is kokir, meaning slightly hidden, but karma is shintu kokir, very hidden. So, and only accessible to like the omniscience of a Buddha's mind could really make those karmic correlations. I think what you're getting at is the supporting conditions that need to be there for karmas to arise. So for example, I need the seed, but I also need the water and the sunlight and the soil for the plant, right? You can't tell me that it's just the seed. So that's true. Yes, causes and conditions, but that doesn't change the fact that there is what we call a principal cause, the thing without which the result could not come into being. So like I could not have a plant with just soil and sunlight and water. I do need a seed. So that principal cause, that's how you could interpret a karma that then produces a result. But to your question, let's say maybe you're thinking like, okay, is it one karma that determines my next rebirth, or is it multiple karmas, right? To which the answer is both. There will be one principal cause, one karma, it's called the Nirlangi Q, which is the thing that projects or determines the flavor of the next rebirth. But there's all sorts of supporting causes and conditions that will fill in the dots, fill in the lines. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that does help a little bit. And I just have another thing I'm noticing is how many plant-based metaphors there are in this explanation, and yet it seems like plants have been neglected, which seems really like funny to me.
Yes, that's beautiful. I'm just talking about plants. You could do this with anything. it just seems a little less obvious. Like it's harder to wrap my mind around, oh, I have a house to live in because I gave away shelter in the past. It doesn't seem, it is, I mean, according to this, that is true at that level. But yeah, I love that.
But it's not just you, right? I feel like these plant-based metaphors are used in other like Buddhist teachings too.
Yeah.
It's funny how like plants have been neglected, it seems, from the order of
yeah.
I feel like this is a pretty obvious question that probably always comes up with karma, and I would love you to address it a little bit, just around the nature of cause and effect and people deserving what they get on a larger universal scale, and especially how that intersects, particularly through your lens and the Three Jewels community, with social justice.
Sorry, could you rephrase the question? Sorry, repeat the question, Marissa.
Yeah. Basically, if, you know, you can hear about karma, and on a kind of surface level, like people are where you're in a great house because you did good deeds. You're in like a small house and you don't have any food because you deserve it. You did bad deeds in a different life. So, you know, like the Holocaust happened because the Jews did bad things. And I'm curious if you can talk about that from like a social justice perspective.
Yeah.
I can't see you anymore because I see David instead. Hi, David.
Yeah, I'd love to do that, because it's a really important conversation that I hope we're all asking ourselves. And then here's what I'll say. Let's do that. Let's do the 4 steps so you have something to go with, and then we'll dedicate and end class because I know we're at time. But to your question, Marissa, so one thing which karma is often, like, I don't want it to have the flavor of being deserved, which I know it can sometimes, right? I deserve what's happening to me in my life because of something I did in the past. Something to hopefully help with that is you probably didn't know the causes you were planting to create this current existence. What I mean by that is, one, the force of infinite prior births would play into it, right? So it's not just things you've collected in this birth. And then most of the time, it's like walking around the house with your glasses on your head, asking, where are the glasses? You don't know what you're doing. We're unaware of these forces at play. So that's one thing. But as soon as you ask the question of looking at someone else's karma, right? Like, why is this happening to that other person? Or even, why is this happening to me? It counts. But I'll take us back to the very first class, because the beautiful implication of this system is that I am not only I am responsible for absolutely everything that I see in the world. So it would be mistaken for me to look at someone else and be like, oh, they had bad karma for that to happen to them. Or they had really good karma. That must be why that's happening to them. And rather, I'm seeing everything as a projection, a forced projection from my own mind. It's not multiple people's karmas overlapping and butting heads. It's everything is unspooling from my own mind. So it's actually, hopefully, should be a reason to, it should stoke my compassion, because it's not that someone else's karma was bad. It's that I'm forced to see that person in that way. And because of that, I must find the roots of, let's say, that injustice that I see. Like let's bring it to this current moment. Should I see it as there are certain people in the world that have less virtuous karma than I do, and that's why they're experiencing life in that way? That's one way to see the world. I think the more compassionate one, the one that will free us all faster, is if I can take responsibility. If every injustice I see in the world, well, the root of it must be in my own mind. If I see racism in the world, it's because at some level in the past I've discriminated. If I see any sort of brutality or unfairness, it starts as a tiny, tiny seed, but it started in my mind. So I don't care about a police officer's karma. I care about the karma that caused me to see a police officer as having karma. It's a little meta, but I hope that you can hear that. So I hope that that answers the question of like, you're never absolved of guilt. If you can expand your mind large enough to sort of encompass everything and take responsibility for everything, which is what the Bodhisattva ideal is, at least, then you can never say, oh, well, that was their karma. Because it's your karma to see it as their karma. So it's your karma.
Yes. Okay. It's complex, and I think also easily misunderstood. But just a quick follow-up on that, because this came up for me with someone else. If you do not see racism, you deny racism, how do you, how does that fit into this model of if you see racism, it's because it's in your own heart? Because then the other side of that is if you don't see racism, it's not in your heart. But obviously, we know that's not true.
Yeah.
What does Buddhism say about that?
Yeah, so what I'd say there, and I know I'm seeing a lot of activity in the chat, so hopefully there's some answers there as well. I'm sure there are. But remembering that karma is the movement of the mind and what follows. So it's not just what I think to be true, but it's what that thought pattern causes me to say and to do. And I will have consequences. I will experience consequences that reflect those actions. So I could delude myself all day long thinking, oh, I'm in an enlightened paradise and there is no racism, there is no pandemic, there is no suffering, and act in that way. And I'm just going to keep tripping over myself because that's denying the reality that's there. It's just further engaging in a mistaken way. That's like putting the example personally. Does that make sense? So it's not just what you think, but it's then what you do as a result of that movement of mind.
So emptiness is not part of the picture when it comes to something like seeing racism.
It is. It is in that when it's what you just said, the experience of racism is empty of a nature, which is why some people can deny it versus some people can benefit from it, if you could even put it that way, versus some people must suffer the brunt of it. From its own side, as an entity, it doesn't have a nature or a power, but each of us are forced to experience it in a certain way. This system is saying the reason that is because of things that are embedded in our consciousness that are not fixed. They can change. That's the idea. That's what brings us to this next list. But it is that. There's no racism out there exerting itself on you.
Okay.
And I hope, I'm trying to say that with as much compassion as possible. I hope it's landing that way. So let me leave it with this, which let's work with racism actually with this 4 steps. Because the way I think about this is, okay, we just studied the 4 laws of karma, right? Like that's studying the mechanics, but I describe it often as like, whether or not you believe in gravity, gravity exerts its force on you, right? You don't have to believe in it. However, once you start to understand the mechanics of gravity, you can make it work for you. You could do an inversion in a yoga class, or you could learn how to fly. So that's sort of what the 4 steps are. They're saying, okay, there's this thing called karma. There's this thing called the way my mind moves and then what I do and say as a result. Well, how can I make it work for me, create the world I want to see, rather than exert itself on me as this inertia, as this memory, as this habit? So it's like this current moment, a lot of people collectively are deciding what we want out of a nation or out of leadership or out of this world. Right? It's saying if you really want to see a world that's completely free from racism and all the systems and sources that create racism in the first place, decide what you want. Be really clear about that. 2, identify someone else who wants the same thing. Number 3, this is important. You need to watch yourself actually help them get what they want. And then this is the 4th one, which they say, like a lot of people do 1, 2, and 3. They might like intrinsically feel that, okay, that's how I need to do the things, that I want, that's how I need to create the things I want to see. But they forget to do number 4, which is rejoicing, which is bliss. It's the bliss meditation that Earl teaches on Friday evenings. Also, Santi guides that class. But it's this idea of, it's like watering the seeds in your mind. It's like, instead of the talk track of, oh, things will never change. Oh, here's another terrible news announcement about the world falling apart. It's actually remembering steps 1 through 3 and bringing your mind back to those things. Because if your mind becomes what you place it on, then rejoicing starts to make sense, right? So they say you rejoice at the end of every day. Or once you kind of complete a karmic act, rejoice. Like, feel good about the good thing you just did. Feel good about understanding the mechanics, really, of how things come into being. There's a lot with karma. So I know I'm seeing things in the chat as well. Let's keep talking about it next week. But I hope that's helpful to at least, no pun intended, plant the seed. Okay. Or actually, so yeah, we're actually really close, but let's end for today since we're already over. We'll just talk about animals next week. And we are going to dedicate, I'll go back, but to something Santi just shared made me think that Dharma Cafe, which happens on Monday evenings, that would be a great time to bring up exactly these types of points. I think we've already had one about like racism on, but yes, Zoe's talking about it, Sam's talking about it. That's a great place to talk about these things, because obviously right now I was trying to give you course content and talk about this very real projection of racism in our world. It's absolutely relevant. We should have these conversations. So it's a great, oh good, I'm glad. So you guys are still talking about it, sounds like Zoe's saying. So check that out on Mondays with Miriam and Heather. Also, this is relevant. Tonglen, which I talked a little bit about last week, it is a karmic purification practice. It's exactly that. It's saying if I'm responsible for everything, including what I see as other people's karma, right? Only then would it make sense that I would sit in meditation and actually voluntarily eat that karma. I saw your chat earlier, David. It is that. It's only then would I sit and feel like I have something in me that could actually destroy the cycle of karma, or the chain reaction of karmas. And I would take that from the whole universe, eat it, and in exchange, give away the highest thing I could possibly give. Giving and taking. That practice of Tonglen, totally relevant. The last session is this Wednesday. And let's dedicate, and then for those who want to stay on, we can keep staying on and chatting. Is that good? So this is the flavor of rejoicing, meaning your mind just planted a lot of karmas. I don't know what the flavor of them were, but there were 65 for every second the last 2 hours and 15 minutes. So that's a lot. And any of those which you would like to expand or grow or get to keep exploring, think of someone else who would yearn for that. Like yearn for 2 hours and 15 minutes of peace to just sit and contemplate this stuff, investigate this stuff, hear it. And imagine it as we chant these words and hold this gesture to give it away to them, that it somehow actually reaches them. So that's what we're doing here. Sashi Puki Jixing Metok Cham Ram Lingshin Inde Gampati Sangye Shingdu Mikte Warki Drokun Namdak Shingla Druparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam yataya gewadi kewok sanam yashe sok sanam yashe meju dampa kuni topar shu. Thank you so, so much. It's almost indescribable how much I'm learning through this experience. So I'm really, really grateful that you keep showing up, and please keep bringing your questions. Here are some announcements. One thing I'll share in the chat now, and let me stop sharing, is that Google Doc that I circulated last time too. So if you sign up on here, I won't spam you, but I will send you the slides each week and any other relevant announcements. I'm gonna do that here. And I'm happy to stick around if people just want to chat.